I'm Sherri, a CEO, speaker, coach, and author. As a business leader, I'm on a mission to empower women everywhere to embrace their most authentic self by challenging what you already know, then stretch to consider a different perspective. I share moments with people all over the world who are already on that path and are willing to share that perspective with me. Join me as we transparently consider this. Hey guys, it's me, Sherri, again, and welcome to PrettyGirlsWork podcast, Consider This, where we have conversations that explore how we as women can empower one another to be our most authentic selves, where we can do that practically in our professional and personal lives. Each conversation is going to provoke your perspectives, okay? It's going to have you think outside the box and consider something different. So let's get into it and consider this. Today, we have a guest, and we're going to be talking about what I want us to consider today is how we handle our men's mental health. And when I say our men's, I'm speaking about our Black men, our men on a whole, but I want to speak specifically about our Black men and our community, because mental health is a real thing, y'all. It is a real thing. And how we as women handle men and their mental health can make a huge difference, not just for our relationships and how they show up authentically for us, but how we relate one to another. You feel me? Today, I am so blessed. I am so excited to have this guest. This is a treat for me. This young man, you heard me say it right. I said a young man on Consider This. Come on now, somebody. Yes, he's a young man who has gone through some things, has got great insight, has, I would dare say, an anointing for all you Christian folks that are with me. Please track with me. But more importantly, he has an amazing understanding of men and him being a man himself, but also men that he's worked with. He's a marriage and life coach. I'm just going to bring him on. Please welcome to the PrettyGirlsWork Consider This podcast, Mr. Quest Green. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Pay to the order of Sherri. Yeah, I'm sending the check right now. All that good stuff you just said a while ago. I was like, yep, the check is in the mail.
You better stop. No, man, I'm so blessed to have you here and just to have this conversation with you. I remember us talking about it and saying, man, if there's anybody I'd like to talk to about this, it would be you, because I think you just have such a great handle on what it is that men feel, but then articulating that. Mm-hmm. I read somewhere that men, and I don't like this stat at all, I really hope it's not the same, but men commit suicide 4 times more than women do.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked by that. Yeah. Because I feel like we as women are so much more emotional than men. And if anybody's going to go over the top and do something extreme, I would think it'd be us. So when I read that men are committing suicide 4 times more than we are, I said, what's happening? What's going on? And
not only is it happening amongst Caucasian males, where it didn't happen amongst Black and brown people, it is now happening amongst Black and brown people, if you will.
Yeah. And let me just say, guys, this is a man. You're not paying me no check, but this is a man who also is the director of Thank God I'm Married at the Eric Thomas and Associates Incorporated, company. This is hip hop preacher, you know him, E.T. That's that guy. So this is who he's connected to as well. So you understand and know where his mind is coming from and who he's around, as well as who he influences as well. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Can we talk about this? Let's get into it. Like, men have this stigma, right? There's a stigma of men being just, you got to be strong. And that word on its own is like, let's define what strong means. But you got to be strong, got to have it in control. You're the head of the home, all of these, you're the leader. And I feel like those titles or those labels put such a huge weight and pressure on men to show up like that, even when it's not the case. Talk to me about what y'all go through and how can we kind of take some of that off of your back, if we can at all?
Right. So one of the first things I want to do is those titles and those labels that you talk about are not are societal driven titles and labels, if you will.
Yes.
And a lot of the times the lines get blurred, and when the lines get blurred, like for real, there's no substance in those titles and labels. I personally believe, as we talk about this thing in men and what strong is and what strong isn't, right? I believe strong is closely related to integrity and character, not necessarily physical strength, not necessarily how many women you have, because you know that's a thing, right? But it's all related to integrity and character. I realized that the reason you were talking about the stats that you were talking about a while ago, and so many more men creating, or I'm sorry, not creating, but committing suicide, is relative to the fact that they lack vulnerability. They ask, well, what does one have to do with other? I grew up in a West Indian household, and there was a term that my father always used to use, and he said, pressure bust pipe, right? That's what he said, pressure bust pipe. So in other words, he would talk about like all you have uncles and so on that were always in carpentry, and they could build homes and do rehome, and they would talk about the water pressure in the pipe and how it has to be a certain pressure, because if it goes above that, then chances are that something can happen in the wall, a pipe bust, and we got problems all over the place, right? And so in essence, that's really what happens amongst men. We come up in communities. If you know anything like me, I was back and forth to Jamaica, and I even went to school there for a little while, but I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I was the first generation born here in the States, right? And so depending on where you grew up, Sherri, like for me, I grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and some of our inner city areas, we're not taught to feel. We're not taught to express ourselves. As a matter of fact, if you were emotional in any way, shape, or form, you were viewed as a mama man, or you're weak. You know what I'm saying? Or you know what I'm saying? Not realizing that we are human beings and we have feelings. It amazes me that we're not taught to express emotion. But when you see men at funerals, all of them have shades on, bro.
Right.
We all know what you do. You're crying. Why? Because you lost a loved one. We know what that is. So don't tell me that we're not supposed to feel. However, that is the thing that we're taught. And when we get older and we get into relationships with women who are emotional creatures, and they share and connect through feeling in their conversations, they talk. What happens when you're in a relationship and you don't know how to do that? Or what happens when you don't have a place that you can release? It builds up, it builds up and builds up. And the equivalent to the pipe busting is sometimes, unfortunately, suicide. Yep.
Yeah. And other things, you know what I mean? And addictions and cheating. And, there's all these other things, like so many other things that can come out to be, or anger and abuse, like just so many things. So I guess as we speak about this, I feel an awesome responsibility as a woman who has I have two sons. My children are all old now. I've got grandchildren now, but I feel like, what have I done even as a single mother? Like we have family meetings, and we have very raw family meetings where I'm like, listen, if you got to curse, it's not just mommy here at the family meeting and I can't speak. Like talk out whatever you need to talk out. And I'm happy to say that I've been able to create an atmosphere within our family where even in my last meeting, both of my sons were crying, as they were expressing how they were feeling. And my daughter did not know how to respond to their tears. Interesting enough. So I was like, this is interesting. What are we doing as women and as sisters, as aunties, as mamas, grandmothers? What are we doing to create atmospheres? Because I feel like, yes, those labels are BS, but yet still, as you just said, we still be putting shades on to go to a funeral where you're gonna cry because you lost somebody, right?
Yeah, indeed. Here's the funny thing, Sherri. A lot of that stuff is deep rooted.
It is.
I researched or read some work done by Dr. Denise Webb, and she wrote a book called Running on Empty.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is we get older, and I'm looking at your daughter now, and my parents did it. And it's not that they wanted to or intentionally did it. They only did what they knew how to do.
That's all.
Sometimes they never gave us space to be emotional. Sometimes we had concerns as young people, you know what I'm saying? Little people. I look at Nico and Mason now, who are my sons, and they are 8 and 4 years old. And I catch myself sometimes, right? Because I try my best to live in a state of awareness, but I catch myself sometimes doing the very thing that my father said to me, like, stop whining, stop crying. And I'm like, he's crying for a reason, right? At 4 years old. And sometimes we put unfair expectations on him to be able to express himself the same way that we do. But they cry because they don't have the vocabulary yet to fully express what's going on. And so they cry. So our first response is, stop crying, stop whining. You're going on like a mama man. Stop that fool. Of course, in West Indian fashion, of course, right? And so sometimes I forget that I have to ask him questions. Use your words. What's because for us it's something simple, but for him and in his world, it's something major. Like he saw his brother today. I was getting ready. Perfect example. We were getting ready for the show. He comes running in and he says to me, Daddy, I have to get my clothes. I said, no, wait until mommy gets out the bathroom. He runs out of the room crying, right? But why does he run out of the room crying? Because his brother just came in here earlier on. His older brother got his jogging pants, got his, because it's snowing here in Jersey. So they're excited to go. So he got his dress and he was like, ran back out of the room. So I ran out there and asked him, why are you crying? Like with a little bit of aggression, but because I was trying to accomplish getting ready for this, not realizing that he had emotional needs. And I caught myself. Don't worry, mommy's going to be out of a couple of minutes and she'll be able to bathe you, put your clothes on, and then you can go outside and play in the snow. Would you know that after I explained that to him, he went and calmed down, sat down for a little while? Why? Because Daddy said exactly what I wanted to hear. He was trying to get it accomplished. And a lot of the times we don't address the emotional needs. And when they get older now, right, and they can't, and they're trying to pinpoint, why am I not developing the way that I'm supposed to? Why can't I deal with emotional issues? And they start turning inward and blaming themselves, not realizing that it's emotional neglect.
Listen, and let me tell you, I'm gonna take responsibility. My daughter does that because she mimics me. Okay, straight goods. So when you say it's deep-rooted, 100%, we didn't always have family meetings. We graduated and we gotten there now. But as you said, what I saw in that family meeting is you are walling up and numbing yourself from feeling what your brothers are expressing to you right now because it's too painful for you to deal with. I've done that. So I know where she gets it from, right? So I had to take responsibility. And so now I'm working with her to help her to understand, listen, vulnerability is not a weakness. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because when we as women see men to be vulnerable, and let me just say this. This is such a dichotomy because man, I grew up in the Bronx, okay? I grew up in South Bronx, okay, all day. Boricua all day, okay?
Come on. I'm married to him, so I know.
Come on. It's just like, it's the same West Indian community, Caribbean type of, it's either you're going to be this or you're going to be this. There's no gray areas. So, and then you grow up in the Bronx where it's hard. It's, you know what I mean? It's tough. It's hard for you to even show emotion because if you do, it could be considered as your easy prey.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So we grew up, when you say deep rooted, we grew up saying, I can't be out here looking soft. I can't be out here looking weak because the minute I do, somebody be like, her, get her. Boom, it's like a bullseye I put on my back. Yep. So that said, how do we now, with all of that deep rooted stuff that's inside us? And like I said, I have graduated, I'm growing. I'm not going to say I've grown, but I'm going to say I'm growing and I'm trying to make more space and more safe space for the men in my life to be brave enough to be vulnerable. Child, it's a process, okay? But what can we do? What can we do as women to really help make those atmospheres or create those atmospheres without us? I should say without, maybe we need to start with us and what we got going on in our heads. Maybe I just answered the question, but I really need to know how we create those spaces so that men can can feel safe enough to be able to be vulnerable and not see it as a weakness or like your mama man or like your a kitty cat. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't want to be seen as that, but at the same time, you do need to exhale and say and express, just like your 4-year-old needed to express how he felt the way he did it.
Yeah.
You know? So how do you do that as women?
I think it's a joint effort. I think sometimes men, we need to have the courage to be able to show ourselves vulnerable in certain spaces. Now, I'm not saying that I need to be vulnerable with everyone, right? Because people are just not humble, mature, you know what I'm saying, and vulnerable enough to handle vulnerability. And it's funny, real side note, real quick. I find now, Sherri, that in conferences, when I do a lot of marriage conferences or life coaching conferences, when I speak, I would fight. I remember like when I first started, there were things because I have to be transparent to some extent for other people to get their healing.
Right.
And in explaining it and confronting it or being transparent, you have to go back to some places that you don't necessarily want to spend any time. And I remember I would grit my teeth or I would hold down onto my tongue just so that for real, the pain would take me away from actually crying. Right. And I've realized that no, you need to release. If you're going to be transparent in that space, right? And what men were coming out the woodwork after, bro. There, I did this. How do I handle this? How do I do this? How do I, you know what I'm saying? Why? Because I chose to be. Now that's our side of the fence. On you guys' side of the fence, you have to create the environment for us to be vulnerable, right? Such that we can be vulnerable with you while still maintaining our manhood. Case in point, a couple of years ago, we were actually up here. We're in New Jersey. I had went back home, ran over the bridge to go and see some friends. While I was there, we hadn't had the car that we had at that time for a year yet. And I got into a little fender bender in Manhattan and I rode myself out. And it wasn't a whole lot of damage. It's just that it bent the bumper a little bit, came back, explained it to my wife. And she was like, all right, it's cool. We'll call the insurance company. But Sherri, when I tell you I was riding myself, I'm like, yo, we too grown for this kind of stuff. We don't get into car accidents no more. Ray. The following day, right, because I just wouldn't let it go. You know, sometimes we are our worst critics. We are the hardest on ourselves, right? Well, something so simple. We went to take the kids to Sesame Place the following day. And so while we were there, first I couldn't really enjoy myself because my mind was still affixed on the fender bender I got 2 days ago. So I said to my wife, I was like, babe, I'm not really feeling myself right now. I'm really angry that I got into that fender bender. And she was like, babe, get over it. We're at Sesame Place. The kids are here. But in her saying it, she kind of like dismissed it because it really wasn't big to her. But because I felt away in the way that it almost sounded like man up. You know what I'm saying? And that's the worst thing that you can say to a man when he's sharing with you, because we don't do that a lot. And when we do, and you say man up or anything remotely close to it, it makes us feel like, okay, yep, I see, I can't be that no more because it's gonna make me seem like I'm in my feelings.
Okay, wait, I gotta say something right here. Just in your wife's defense and in our defense as women, when we say get over it, we're trying to lessen the feeling for y'all. We're not saying get over it. It's the problem. We're trying to be like, it's okay.
No, that's true. But remember who we are and how we're built. Anything that's remotely close to that or sounds like that, we're like,
yes,
nope, we not that.
Yeah, that's the ego. Is that not the ego that we have to contend with?
Yeah, you feel me? And so with that being said, like for real, it was a long time before I was vulnerable with her again. And we would speak about it at conferences. And she was like, oh, I didn't know it was that deep. No, it is that deep. Right. And then so she made a switch. Second opportunity came. And here's the thing I need to say for women. This is a very touchy area. Oh, yeah, it's a very touchy area for men. So when you create the environment, ask questions a lot so that you can like slowly but surely move into it. Don't handle it quick.
Okay.
It's a delicate.
Ask questions. Ask questions.
Ask a lot of questions to create for the purposes of creating an environment, right?
Okay.
The second time that it happened, for those who don't know, like for real, Me and Fife from A Tribe Called Quest, we grew up together. John, Tip, Ali, right? I met Ali through them. Jerobi, I just officiated over his wedding year before last. All of us grew up together, right? They used to come pick me up from high school, and we, you know what I'm saying, from little. When Fife got into the business, I ended up becoming his hype man, and I was on the road with him for a little while. And for those who don't know, he passed away in 2016, I want to say it was, right?
Okay.
It hit me like a brick. Because when I tell you, Sherri, that was my dude. That was my dude. Yeah. I remember he would go on the road and he would tell me to hold my per diem, and he would buy our outfits. Like, he like, yo, hold that money. I'm good. I'm going to take care of us. And he would always do that kind of stuff. When he passed away, it hit hard. I officiated over his funeral at the Apollo that same year. And I remember just this summer, we were in Florida for about 5 months during the pandemic. And I remember driving down the road one day, and this song that he did with Black Eyed Peas and De La Soul came on the radio. And he speaks in the intro. And as soon as he spoke and he was saying what he was saying, Sherri, it hit like a brick. I don't even know where from. I don't know where it came from, but the tears said, "Pow!" and they just started streaming down my face. I bit my lip, but by that time I couldn't stop it no more. And Faith looked over and was like, "Whoa, what?" You know, that kind of cry where if you talk, it's gonna sound crazy.
Yeah.
And I just pointed to the radio, and she automatically knew. And so this is the second opportunity she had. She held onto my arm. She was like, "You okay?" And I just kind of nodded my head. And she reminded me, you know, the conversations that, because he died as complications of diabetes, she began to talk to me about how we live our lives and how we need to maintain our health. What she was doing was creating a safe environment for me to be able to release, right? And still keep my manhood after. And I remember later on that day, after we got back to the house, because it happened while we were in the car, he begins to refer to me as daddy. And say things like, "Daddy, we can't move unless you run in the point. We can't do X, Y, and Z unless you run in the point." All the things she needed to say to make me know that regardless of what happened in the car between me and you, and only me and you will ever know about it, and the only reason why everybody else knows about it is because I talk about it. He never said anything about it,
right,
in any public space. But she began to reaffirm me and pour back into me to let me know that it's okay for you to be daddy, head of home, and all of that good stuff, and still be vulnerable with me. Why? Because I'm an emotional and I need to connect with you. So, that's it. The environment.
We need to tread lightly. We need to tread lightly. But also, what I'm hearing you say is acknowledgement. I think that that's something that's so key. She acknowledged your tears.
Yeah.
And she reached out to you. You know what I'm saying? I think that that's really, really important. But can I just say, like, you just said something, you said you heard, and then you couldn't even wait because it just came through because it was overwhelming. And of course it's going to be. That's normal. That's actually healthy to release those tears. You and I both know that, but check it. That was a trigger. So many times in relationships, I don't care who it is, mother or son, doesn't matter, uncle, child, godson, husband, wife. There are triggers that happen that we are so unaware of as the women in your lives. And if you don't let us know, this is the trigger for me, then we're going to keep on stepping over the line and stepping on that trigger or pushing the button. And next thing you know, we're in a fight because I said something where I seemed dismissive. You feel me? Like I seem dismissive to you, or I seem like I don't care, when in truth, I'm like, what? Why would you even think I would not care? But I didn't know your trigger. How do we as women become more aware or observant of that when you guys don't even know how to articulate what the trigger is?
Everything that you're saying, there's duplicity in it.
I know.
You feel me? Like first and foremost, let me just go back a little bit. That situation where I had where the whole song on the radio played as a trigger, Sherri, was not only for the purposes of me missing my dude. And when I began to release, it was like, it was almost spiritual to release, because it allowed me to, for that release, also release for a couple of other things that I don't normally release for as well.
Got you.
You see what I'm saying? This is the one thing that I envy about you women. The thing that I envy about you women the most is that you can call a girlfriend over to discuss whatever this Negro did this or whatever it is that he did, and girl, and you can cry each other down to the floor. I'm talking about snotty, wet, I'm talking about release. And by the time that crying is done, and you get up, you've dust yourself off, and then you're ready to go on and do your thing and leave it right where it was. Men are not, we feel like we're not allowed that space to do that same thing. In other words, you are allowed to release the pressure in your pipe, which allows everything else to flow more efficiently. So that's one. That one release was almost, like I said, spiritual, because not only did it was a release for that, it was a release for so many other things that had built up over a period of time. So that's one thing. I'm saying that there's duplicity in it because the responsibility or the onus is not only on you, right? I believe I'm a Bible-based marriage believer. So in other words, when you read Ephesians 5, it says, for this reason, for the reason of marriage, shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Right? So it's not just the responsibility of the wife. It's also the responsibility of the husband. I always tell couples this: you're not the problem. Your spouse is not the problem. The problem is the problem. How are you going to work together against the problem and not each other? And so when you talk about like how are we going to navigate through this, right? I feel like it is also my responsibility to understand that you need love, right? As my wife must understand that I need respect as her husband. Remember what the word says: husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave his life for it. Then he tells the wives, respect your husbands, or submit yourself to your husband. People think that submit is a bad word, but if your husband is following the Creator, you better follow that joker.
Follow him.
Okay,
follow him. You know where he's going.
So more. Let me move it now to a more practical. If the husband needs respect and the wife needs love, and those two things are interdependent upon one another. So in other words, we're not going to be too respectful if I'm not pouring into her and loving her the way that she wants to be loved and not the way I want to be loved.
Right. They're both connected.
Right.
They're both connected.
She's not going to be too respecting. So if she feels unloved, she might be a little bit disrespectful.
Yeah.
And there's a number of different ways that men classify respect. So if she's disrespectful and he needs respect and he's being disrespected, he ain't going to be too loving.
Right.
So he continues to be unloving. She feels unloved. She's going to be disrespectful. He feels disrespected and responds by being unloving. And then the cycle starts spinning, the stupid cycle, if you will. And that only stops when either I love her unconditionally or she respects me unconditionally. And marriage is the only institution where it has to be unconditional.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying to you before, it's duplicity. In order for her to do for me what I need for her to do for me, I better make sure that I'm loving her. And as long as I'm loving her and her tank is full, I know something about you women that most men just breeze by, is that whenever we fill you up, you're going to look for a way to provide reciprocity.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll pour out. We'll definitely pour out.
Yeah.
100%. When we're, especially, as I've heard it said before, when my cup overflow, you gonna get it. You gonna get it.
Come on.
Just fill it up. Just fill it up. And now you're right. It is duplicity because it's my responsibility to keep my cup full. It's not just your responsibility, but it's interconnected. I think of our young Black men in our community, especially now, especially with the very heightened anti-racial climate. It's always been there, but it's a lot more heightened in conversations in corporate, Canada, corporate America these days. And I think about just all of the emotions that men go through in a professional setting as well as in a personal setting that cannot be released, like that pressure build up. What your dad would say, it's soon bust. And I feel like when we see certain things happening within society, that this is what it is: a pressure built up and now a busting. But my thought right now is, we as women in your lives want to, and I really believe this, I really know that Because we say, just tell us the truth. Be honest with us. Like we say these things all the time. We just want a man who's going to keep it 100, who's going to keep it a buck, who's going to always keep it real with us. And then when they do keep it real with us, we look at them almost in a resentful way. Almost. Now I wouldn't say fully. Some women probably do, but I want to say we always almost look at you in a resentful way. Like, are you not supposed to be strong? And I want to say first and foremostly, I'm sorry that we do that. Because that is way too much pressure for any one person to have, to always be up, always be on, always be good. Like that's just way too much pressure. But I know that we as women sometimes put that pressure on you. I want to say, so I'm saying sorry to you and to all the men that have gone through that. So here we are now. Here we are. We're aware. We see you guys, going through it. We see the protests. We see. What about the young men that do not have the words to say exactly how they feel? And the women in their lives, what can we do to say, let me help you find your words? Let me help you find a place where you can be. Is it finding a mentor for our sons? Is it, encouraging our men to go and network with some men's group? Like, what do we need to do to support y'all? Because I really feel like y'all need that support, to know that it is okay to be vulnerable, and that vulnerable is not weakness. It's exposure for sure, but it's not weakness. It actually takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable, I would say. It's easy to cover up and mask up. It's easy to put the ego on and just be prideful and just be like, nah, I'm good. But it's harder to say, this is how I'm feeling. So what can we do to support y'all? And what can practically be done so that the men in our community can actually have more of a voice of saying, this is how I'm truly feeling?
First and foremost, you were saying, is it this, or is it this, or is it this? I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay.
What are all the things that you need in this season of your life? For some people, we need therapy. Let's just keep it 100. And I know that that's a taboo topic in our community, but I always confront people and ask them, therapy is taboo? Yeah. I mean, and they don't say taboo, but they say everything else relative to it. So I ask them, when the toilet gets stopped and you can't unclog it, or when something goes wrong with the pipes, who you call? And they'll tell me a plumber. Okay, good. If something's wrong with your car and you can't fix it, who do you go to? And they say a mechanic. I say, if you bust a hole in the sheetrock in your wall, who do you call? A carpenter or contractor? Okay, cool. So why is it that when you can't work out things cognitively, you don't go and see a therapist?
Right.
You just sit there. It kills me when you whatever it is to relieve that. When you cannot work things out cognitively, why is it that you won't go to a therapist? And people start sitting there and it's crickets. And this is the thing that sidebar. This is the thing that I think we miss out on in this day and age. And I think it's almost like a lost art and we need to regain it, is the ability to think. I read a study the other day, Sherri, and it blew me away. It said 2% of the population actually thinks. 3% thinks they're thinking, and 95% would rather die than to think through any given issue or topic, difficulty, challenge. And here's the truth of the matter. Most of the answers that we seek already reside on the inside. Our problem is we won't do the necessary thinking in order to uncover the answers.
My God. God.
All that you need, like, why am I thinking that therapy is taboo? Just actually sit there and just think through that. What could possibly be an issue if you know what I'm saying? Like, we would rather.
What could go wrong? What's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Our emotions are safety for us, right? And here's the funny thing. Emotions don't always serve you well. Anytime it's time to make a decision, we should never make a decision from our emotions, because if we're feeling bad, the decision's going to be bad. But even if you're feeling good, not everything that looks good or feels good is good. And so you may be impulsive in your decision making because I know a lot of relationships. I'll leave that right there. It looked good. It felt good. It wasn't good. And that's because you were impulsive and you didn't sit there and think through and look for the signs for stuff. The answers are already here. And if most people would just, for real, think that through, and go and see a therapist, we can work through half of this stuff that we're facing. So when you ask the question, it's both and. Whatever that situation needs, is it therapy? Do you need somebody to just hug you? Do you need somebody to confide in and talk to? Do I need a confidant? All of those things. We just assess the situation, see what it needs, or sometimes ask the questions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Provide a safe space for our men. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so good. We could talk for hours about
Sherri,
this.
I promise you we can.
We could talk for hours about this, but first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for talking with us, for sharing those gems, because I agree with you. I always say that whenever I'm hungry, I always halt. Hungry, or I'm angry, or I'm upset, or I'm lonely, or I'm tired, I do not make any decisions in those states. And I agree with you. And I think that it's important that, if you guys are listening, as you guys are listening to this podcast and watching this, I want you to understand that there are men in your life that are hurting. And you won't know unless you do what he just said, ask the questions, and maybe even encourage that person to go and seek therapy, to get someone that they could talk it out with. There's nothing wrong with that. There's so much health in that. And today we're talking about how we can support our men in their mental health struggles. They're not the only ones that have it. Quest, thank you. How can we follow you? We can follow him. Please follow this young man at Quest_Green on Instagram.
Yes, indeed.
Go to jquestgreen.com. What else you got going on right now?
Yep. There's also Twitter at QuestGreen. You can stop by my website at jquestgreen.com. And you said IG already, but shouts out to PrettyGirlsWork. This is a marvelous show. Consider this marvelous. You ladies are fabulous at what you do. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here and talk with you guys today. It's been a blessing, honor, and privilege. Yeah.
Thank you. The honor is all mine. What we usually do at the end of the show is leave a compelling, or what I call a captivating thought. If there's one thought that you could leave with those that are listening and watching, what is that one thing that we can remember, and just above all else, remember this kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say to you, like, for real, there are people that you can trust and there are people that you cannot trust. And not because they can't be trusted, it's because they just live in a space where they lack humility, vulnerability, and maturity. Those are three things that those three lenses that I always look through as it relates to every situation, right? You can tell the people who love you, and you can tell the people who are just there for, there it is. Thank you, Holy Ghost. There are people who come into your life for a place and time, a season, and a reason. Don't confuse the three. Who needs to be in your life for a lifetime, hold on to them. And those who come in for a reason and for a season, just know that it's for a reason and a season. Don't take people who are supposed to be in your life for a season and a reason and pull them into the lifetime category. You will be miserable, disconnected, and despondent. Do me a favor, go to the places that you are celebrated and not to the places where you are tolerated. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Quest. I love you so much. Please, guys, follow this king. Please go to his website. I mean, I don't know if you've got a conference coming up, because I know everything's virtual right now, but follow him. There's so much wisdom in this vessel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. The honor and the blessing is mine. For all of you that are listening, thank you for joining us again for another Consider This conversation. This is what I want y'all to know. We all have emotions, whether they're happy or sad or excited or anxious. We all have them, and they're meant to be shared and not hidden and not suppressed. Let the men in your life release their emotions in a safe place with care and compassion. The epitome of strength is vulnerability. Consider this. God bless you.